All right. Well, hi, everyone from London. Nice to meet you all. So I have been at The Economist for 2 years. I joined in 2019 as head of social media. And I was brought in really to shake up how The Economist approached its main platforms. And I'll explain a little bit about that tonight. Then after a year, so last April, I became head of audience. So now I look after strategy for social media, but I have a team of 9 people who run the social accounts from day to day. I also have a couple of people who work on newsletters. I'm also hiring a couple of people at the moment. So at the end of my presentation, I will let you know about those jobs if you're interested in working here. And I'm going to talk about Instagram mostly, but in order to do that, I need to explain how The Economist treats other platforms as well. So we're going to talk about some old-fashioned social media, if you like, Facebooks and Twitters and other platforms, but then go into a little bit more detail about Instagram specifically. So how we got here is that The Economist, I hope you have all heard of us. Let me just move this out of the way. I hope you've all heard of The Economist. But if you haven't, we are a very, very famous brand, particularly in English-speaking countries. We have a lot of heritage in Britain, obviously, because we are a British publication, but we actually have a bigger audience in America. And most of our subscribers are actually in the US and Canada. So we are well known in the English-speaking world. On social media, we have nearly 60 million followers. And we count those from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn, and those are the platforms that my teams work on. We also have a presence on YouTube, where we have 1 million subscribers, and we are seen on Reddit and Weibo and a few other places, but the 4 that we really focus on are the ones that I've just mentioned. And I suppose perhaps even a couple of years ago, the idea would have been to reach 100 million and to say, yes, we have 100 million followers, that's brilliant. But now, although we do want that audience to increase, our focus is on doing a better job of reaching some of the 60 million people. And because we're a business and we rely on subscriptions, to turn them into long-term paying readers of The Economist, but still obviously have audiences at the top of what we would call the funnel. So social media is one of the broadest ways to reach people, and we need to bring them inside the funnel, try and get them to a point where they want to pay for The Economist journalism. So we're also known for quite a lot of our audience engagement projects. Data journalism is particularly important, and data are key to what we do, in the sense that we want to look at the analytics and understand what's working, but also the way that we present data is a key unique selling point for us, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And the final point to say about The Economist is we're not here to compete on breaking news. So we do now cover news on the day, and we have digital only stories. So we're getting out of the habit of having 90% of our content being published all at the same time on a Thursday when our weekly issue comes out. And for instance, last night we wrote an article about Nicolas Sarkozy and the sentence that he was given, the former French president. We talked about bond markets because that was happening on the live on the stock exchanges. But the bar is very high on what we cover, and we are not trying to be the first organization to break something. We have a saying internally: we will try and be the first organization to produce analysis, and it might take us 2 or 3 hours longer to write a story, but that will have been time well spent. And sometimes we'll wait a few days to write a story, but when you read something from The Economist, hopefully it will be prestigious and it will be interesting, and you will learn something from it. We had a few challenges when I arrived 2 years ago. The traffic for Economist social media accounts was very, very low. So by traffic, I mean the number of people who are actually doing something by looking at a tweet or a Facebook post and clicking back through to our website. We need to get people off social media as much as we need to get them on them. So it's wonderful to have 60 million followers, but if all they do is scroll through their feeds and they never look at an original piece of Economist journalism, we're going to be in a bit of trouble, because we'll have all those followers and we have no way to turn them into readers for the long term. So we decided that we wanted to increase the opportunities to send people back to our website and our app without going crazy and completely changing our outlook or turning to clickbait. Quality rather than quantity was very important. So as I said, 60 million is a wonderful number, but if only 60 of them ever click on your articles, you're in trouble. So I would rather have 1 million of those people who are actively clicking through to our articles, or 5 million people who signed up for something, than to have 60 million as a single big figure that we consider important. Looking for the next generation of subscribers is important, because we have to make sure that we reach another 175 years, and that we're still around in 200 years from now. And also we needed to look at each social platform and customize it a little bit. So having the same approach on each of the 4 platforms was not really working. Using data to understand what was successful and what was not successful was also key here. And so I'm going to go through all of the platforms briefly now, and then I will talk in more detail about Instagram in a few minutes. But we decided that we would treat Twitter like a radio station or a streaming service. So I know everybody's streaming now and you're listening to random things, but if you think about a pop music station, it won't be very long before you hear a song that you recognize if the station is run well. Or if you're listening to a classic hits radio station, perhaps you'll never be far from the Beatles or Queen or any of David Bowie or any of the really, really big bands. And that is deliberate, because the radio stations want to make sure that you are never far away from hearing a song that you like or know. And we decided that we would treat Twitter in the same way, so that you would never be far away from seeing a really good story. So we increased the rotation of new articles to make sure that they were seen more often. And we also made sure that we recycled or re-promoted some of our best older content, our greatest hits. So now when you look at our Twitter feed, you will regularly see news stories from today, news stories from this past week, and then recent stories from the past month or 3 months, and some older material, all of which is mixed in with podcasts, videos, charts, and other pieces of journalism. We took the other approach on Facebook, though. I'm sure all of you have battled with the Facebook algorithm and have tried to work out how to best make your content seen on Facebook. Usually, Facebook will punish you if you post a URL more than once every 24 hours. So you have one opportunity a day to showcase an article. So we decided to only put the best of our content on Facebook, and to be deliberately trying to make sure that the algorithm was recognizing quality material and that people were actually engaging with it. On Instagram, we wanted to turn the account into a shop window for our best visual content. The Economist has wonderful illustrations, it has charts, it has podcasts, but these were not being shown off to the best of our abilities beforehand. So Instagram became a very, very visual place to look at. And on LinkedIn, we wanted to take a more conversational approach. And we came up with a clever way to do that, which I'll talk about in a few moments when we discuss Instagram. But basically, we have aligned our thought process for Twitter and Facebook as kind of one section of the team, and then we thought about Instagram and LinkedIn together. And we then decided to streamline how we look. So we were talking about that earlier this evening, about the importance of a brand and making sure that everything looks right. And we also increased opportunities for other people to contribute material to social media. So crowdsourcing is very, very important. I think if you have a small team, not everybody has professional designers like The Economist does. Not everybody has video producers. If you can ask the people around you if they've got skills or they're willing to contribute, that can really, really help. So when I arrived at The Economist, we had lots of illustrators who were being used in the paper version, the magazine version of The Economist, but their work was never seen on social media. And so we said to them, would you like to appear on social media? Would you like these charts to appear on social media? Can we make designs? Can we make formats and templates for them. And most people, if you tell them that you want to put their material in front of millions of people, will say yes. And so that has really, really helped us. So we have a team of 9 who make the social content, but we have maybe 9 or 10 others who regularly help us to achieve our goals. And what success looked like, well, we trebled the number of social referrals each month over the past 2 years. So they went from a very low number to now an all-time high, which we hit in January. The amount of visits to our website from social media went up from 24% of all digital traffic to 35%. This was actually 44% on the day after the US elections in November. Facebook and Twitter are still very, very important to us, but we now generate more than 1 million visits per month to our website and app from Instagram. And that's a big, big number for us. We're really, really proud of that. 2 years ago, we were generating no visits a month. Now we're generating more than 1 million. And on LinkedIn, we are generating a lower amount, but what we have done is we've increased engagement, and we have aligned our publishing strategies for Instagram and LinkedIn. So on those 2 platforms, we post maybe 8 times a day on Instagram, 8 times a day on LinkedIn. Most of the content is the same. So when we write captions for Instagram, we also use them on LinkedIn. The posts look slightly different because on Instagram, we make them square, we make special cards for them, we make graphics for them. And on LinkedIn, we might have a few more archive posts or videos, but perhaps 2/3 of the content is the same on Instagram and LinkedIn. And they're completely different audiences, so there's no real problem with duplication and overlap. And it also means that the team can pool their resources and make sure that they are working effectively. So I'll spend the second half of our conversation talking about Instagram. People, I guess, 5 years ago would still be thinking of Instagram as a photo platform. You know, your pizza, your baby photos, when we could all go on holiday, those sorts of pictures. But actually, Instagram is a place where people are interested to learn things. The Reuters Digital Institute, or the Reuters Institute Digital Report this year talked about the appetite for news on Instagram particularly. And we have found that there is loyalty there. There is a real appetite to engage with The Economist. And we're very fortunate to have 5 million followers. So those are 5 million people who already have The Economist in their lives. And we're trying to make sure that we're a regular part of their lives and that they come to us every day rather than just following us and not doing anything. So out of that community on Instagram, nearly 2/3 of them are aged 18 to 34, 43% are female, which is higher than our other platforms. Some of our other platforms skew more towards men. And we heard earlier about TikTok followers opening the app 8 times in a day. Well, our followers on Instagram open the app 35 times a day. I would think that they're spending very, very short periods of time on the app. 8 visits to TikTok a day for 50 minutes is perhaps the same as 35 visits to Instagram for 50 minutes. But that means that they want to see new content every time they open the app. I guess, again, in the old days when we used to sit on trains, or we would wait for a coffee, or we would want to check the likes on our feeds, people would be very, very hungry for the latest hit from Instagram. But it is an app that's consumed a lot. However, 5 million followers is great, but for The Economist, that is our smallest platform. And so making all the sorts of content you can see on the screen there takes a lot of time. And we want to make sure that we try and not devote all of our resources to Instagram and take our eyes off the other platforms which are delivering traffic. So how we changed our Instagram account, 2 or 3 years ago, it was very much about photos. And we used to run pictures of the day from news agencies. So the famous companies, Getty Images or Reuters, we would feature their pictures, but we didn't have very much of our own content. And that seemed a great pity to me as someone who loved a lot of what The Economist was doing. So we have, in 2019, turned the account into what I called a shop window earlier on, and we've added photos, and we try and put headlines around the photos, so not across someone's face or in the background, so that makes the cards look very distinctive. Charts and data are some of our most popular content, and you can see the screen there. We try and make charts very easy to read. We use colors. We have red headlines, so every time that you see a chart, there will be something that we hope you will read, will grab your attention. It'll be fairly easy to understand, and that in the second or two that we have your attention before you decide whether to read on or whether to go to the next, the next thing in your feed, you will find something that grabs your attention and makes you stay on for longer. We've also used illustrations and animations, which we brought to life, things like our covers, other graphics, and some of our illustrations we animate and turn into videos or GIFs. We use some quotes. We do use videos, although The Economist tends to make documentaries of 10 to 20 minutes in length rather than very, very short videos. And so we don't feature as much video as some other organizations. We're not making new clips every single day, but we do have some content that we try and run several times a week. And also what we call audiograms, which are when we feature audio content from podcasts, and we use those to try and illustrate perhaps a minute of content from a half-hour program to drive people more to that material and the full episode. So I've taken some screen grabs here from the US election towards the end of last year. These are particular examples of our graphics. And you can see here that our charts, just basic everyday language. In the first slide there about Joe Biden, it's very important that we realize not everybody has English as a first language. And so we want to use words that are fairly straightforward and phrases that are easy to understand if you haven't been following a story closely. And we try and illustrate things very simply. And this was a carousel, and it has a little arrow on that first slide, so it indicates that you should swipe. You can see some of our charts, again, using colors and lines to make it clear that, that we're making a particular point, and using shading as well. We had graphics for the results, and then on the two phones on the right-hand side, very, very detailed county level data. It's very, very difficult to illustrate on a phone. So what we did was we zoomed in, and we used shading, we used different colors to try and make the point that that the voting had gone in a certain direction. And you have to remember as well that some people have very big phones, some people have very small phones. So it's great that people can slide across the phone and zoom in, but you also have to try and keep things as simple as possible, and use the captions to explain what people are looking at. So if something is very complicated, it is quite a complicated chart there, the one with Ohio in it, fourth on the screen. You need a headline that explains what's going on, and you need to have a caption that goes into a bit more detail, but still leaves enough of a tease or a gap in knowledge for people to link in the bio and go through to the original article. We've also used Instagram stories. So we covered both the policies of Joe Biden and the record of Donald Trump when we were preparing our coverage about the US. We used the Q&A format. So we asked people using the Q&A function on Instagram stories what they wanted to know about the election. And then a few weeks later, we came back with the most popular queries, and we asked one of our correspondents who was covering the election if they could explain the details and answer some of the questions. And on the final phone there, you can see that we also use Instagram as a way to promote some of our other content. And we find that newsletters in particular work very well on Instagram in terms of signups. So if we suggest that people sign up to, for instance, our new newsletter on data or science that we have just launched in the past month, when we put those on Instagram, there's a very, very high proportion of people that then do go and click through on the link in the bio and then do actually give us their email address to sign up. So we try and use Instagram to promote things like newsletters and podcasts as well. And one other point to make is that, as I said, there's a lot of work needed to make content for Instagram. So we try and use these in other platforms as well. So you can see here, one of the first things that we tried was a survey that our colleagues elsewhere in The Economist prepare on the best cities in the world to live in. Obviously, COVID has changed everything a lot, but this is from 2 years ago. And you can see that we made charts, we made videos, but they also featured on Twitter. We were able to make threads out of them and use them on LinkedIn and other platforms. So the square format for Instagram will also work well as a Facebook picture post. We have got 5 suggestions to end my conversation with you on, to talk about the tips for success and how to make your account stand out when there are lots and lots of other people who might be doing the same sorts of things. So number 1 is to find your USP or your unique selling point and shout about it. So I hope that today I've explained how The Economist stands out on social media and how it is different from other big news organizations. The second point is to treat social as your shop window. So make it look as beautiful and perfect as possible. You don't need to have very, very expensive software to do that, but you should have consistency. You should have a good idea, so that if somebody lands on your account and has never heard of you before, then you can at least help them to understand what you're about and why they should follow you. The third point is to go for quality rather than quantity. So it's wonderful to have big numbers, but if none of those people are doing anything with your content, you're just going to waste your time. So find the right audience for you and make sure you target them. In the old days, there used to be Instagram accounts, for instance, that were just about food. Now you can have an Instagram account about sushi, or you can follow a particular chef, or you can look at a particular kind of sushi or a particular kind of fish or a particular restaurant. You can get really into detail about one tiny topic. And if you think that that you have a way to make yourself stand out and do that with your audience, then that's a good way to stand out from the crowd. Number 4, it's important to understand what is working and what is not, and to learn from the data. So make sure you're not just doing this for fun, that you actually come up with lessons that you can learn and respond to. And number 5 is to maximize your team's efficiency by making sure that you're not just doing something for one platform and it's only seen by a small amount of your audience. Try and find ways to reversion it or change it for other places. And I think that's the end of my presentation, but one thing I was just going to say, which is a very, very blatant attempt at promotion, is that I am on Twitter. This is my handle here. I am Kevin Young, and I have an Economist face mask on, so that's my profile. But the reason I mention it is because sometimes I share content about social media, but also I'm hiring at the moment. So I'm actually looking for a head of social media to work on my team. They will be in London and they have to have the right to work in the UK, but you can see the job advert there. And I'm also advertising for a senior SEO editor who will also work with our website colleagues as well. So both of those jobs have been posted in the last couple of days. And if you have the right to work in the UK, or you know somebody that does, I would love it if you could share details of the jobs with them. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand back to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And you know, just followed you on Twitter there, so we'll keep monitoring the growing Economist social media team. and spread the word about some great opportunities there. A couple of a very quick question from the audience. How many people are working on The Economist Instagram full time? I think you mentioned that a bit earlier, but could you just say maybe also more broadly about the social media team? How many people are there?
Yeah, so we have 9 people on the social media team altogether, so the head of social media and then 8 others. We have 3 of those jobs are in the US and 5 are in the UK. And we don't tend to specialize on platforms, so we don't have an Instagram a director or Instagram editor. Everybody is able to do a bit of everything, and we tend to take it on a story by story basis. So we have one story, we will think about how it will work on Twitter or Facebook, and then the same person may well write Instagram or LinkedIn captions as well. We made sure that we could operate like that a year ago when the pandemic struck, because if half the team fell ill with COVID and all of them were the Instagram experts, then we wouldn't have been able to run Instagram. So we try and ensure that everybody has a certain level of skills. And then we have some people who are interested in particular topics. You know, some people are very interested in designing Instagram stories, some people do Twitter threads, but we try and make sure that everybody can do a bit of everything. So that's how it works, really.
Okay, thank you so much. And just a question from myself, and then I think we'll jump forward. But where is the initiative sort of coming from to sort of feature a certain story or to take a certain angle? Is it more from the journalists who come knocking on your door, or is it your team that sort of spots something that looks particularly appealing and then decides to work with that?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to say that we take content that is published elsewhere by The Economist, and we basically make it work for social media. So I would say that we are creating original journalism, because a lot of the things that I've shown you are, you know, new ways of presenting what The Economist has written about. But we are not going out and you know, looking at the wire services every morning for the latest videos that we could make viral, or writing something for social media that is not featured elsewhere in The Economist. So we have all of these wonderful pieces of content. I would say we have about 100 articles, podcasts, and videos to work with each week. That might sound like a lot, but I would think probably someone like the New York Times would have 100 a day, or maybe 100 and a half a day. So we are fortunate that we don't have to go into too big a pool of material to work out what to cover, and then we try and tailor things to each platform. So I would say every story goes on Twitter and Facebook at some point in the week, but LinkedIn and Instagram, we only post about 50 times a week on those platforms. So we are much more careful about what the stories we target, and we learn as well. So if we have a topic that it does very well, we keep pushing that topic when we have new content on it. And basically we have a young team, so they also understand what people want to see on Instagram and other platforms. And I should just say finally, you know, we're not on TikTok. I think that we don't feel it's the right platform for us at the moment. That doesn't mean we wouldn't be on it, but the sorts of things that I've talked to you about today are not you know, people dancing or kind of making you know, videos to music or anything. We are slightly different from that. So there may well be a way that TikTok could work for The Economist at some point, but we are focusing on the other 4 platforms for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And just a follow-up question from Maria around how do you sort of interact or cooperate with the rest of the editorial team? And by the way, if I may just add, I really like the phrasing of you know, social media creating original journalism, because I think it really does underscore how big of an effort goes into sort of recreating or sort of transforming original editorial content. But yeah, that said, how does that cooperation work?
Sure. Well, we work very closely with the editors who've signed off and written the articles. Every piece of journalism that The Economist produces is fact-checked, for instance, before it's published on the website or on in print. And so we're very, very careful to work with those editors to make sure we don't introduce new material that is wrong or hasn't been fact-checked as closely. We also have the benefit of people who have worked at The Economist for 30 or 40 years, and they understand what we're trying to do on social media, and they can look at our content a bit differently, and they can say, well, does this picture really work with these words? Or, you know, in trying to cut down this long article into 3 sentences, have you missed the you know, an important fact? And so we work very, very closely with them. And we also use data to help them make decisions. So for instance, if an article has done very, very well on Twitter today, we might decide to put it in a newsletter, or we might decide to send a push alert. So my team is also making some of those choices. And by talking to one another and sharing data, we can be better at digital overall by noticing that something has done well in one place.
Are you also running the newsletters, or?
Yeah, so my team also produces the newsletters. We now have 8 or 9 newsletters, and we've just launched 2 new ones. One is called Off the Charts, which is all about data. So if you love our journalism, I can put the address in the chat in a minute. And we also launched the science newsletter last week as well. Yeah, we produce those. The journalists make the stories, and we produce the newsletters. And we have plans to probably double the number of newsletters that we have this year. So you know, that is a big growth area. Newsletters now provide 10% of our digital traffic, and social media provides about 35%. So my team is contributing almost half of the digital traffic each day to The Economist's website and apps.
Oh wow, that's certainly a very powerful voice in the newsroom, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Kevin.